I'm sorry about that. My daughter is a med student, and it looks like she's really busy with her studies, my mother-in-law apologized. On the day of the engagement party, there was one empty seat on my husband's side. Noticing my gaze, both my mother-in-law and father-in-law came up to apologize, looking quite sorry. That girl, I told her to come. My husband Kenneth also expressed his frustration towards his sister and apologized to my family. My family and I just smiled and said, "Don't worry about it." Relieved by our reaction, my mother-in-law said, "We hope you can get along well with our daughter too." I nodded in agreement. Yes, of course. At that time, I didn't think too deeply about it. I assumed that since my in-laws and husband left a good impression, his sister would be the same. My name is Holly, 33 years old. Kenneth and I had just registered our marriage 2 months ago. We're planning to have our wedding ceremony sometime next year. Around the same time as the engagement party, my mother fell ill and was hospitalized, so I wanted to wait until she fully recovered to have the ceremony. She had always dreamed of seeing me in a wedding dress. Until then, I decided to enjoy my time as a housewife. Before getting married, I worked as a doctor at a hospital. However, I lost my balance of mind and body due to the busy life, causing problems in both my work and daily life. Although I had patients under my care and couldn't leave immediately, I eventually quit the hospital upon others' advice. Perhaps a large hospital wasn't the right fit for me. During the time I was feeling inadequate and embarrassed about my career as a doctor, I met and married my husband. Raised in an ordinary family, he was surprised to learn I was a former doctor but looked at me as a person, not just a doctor. "I'll work hard to keep you smiling," he would say, diligently going to work every day. For such a husband, I devoted myself to cooking and housework. Thanks to him, I can now live my life with a smile. As my health gradually improved, I started thinking about re-entering the workforce, using my medical license. But in the midst of our happy life, there was one thing that concerned me. It was the existence of my sister-in-law, whom I had never met. According to my in-laws, she's a busy med student. We were supposed to meet at the engagement party, but she couldn't make it due to her studies. It seems she passed her exams in one shot, so she must be quite capable. Since my husband and I registered our marriage around the same time as the party, we completely missed the chance to meet her. I hope we can greet each other someday. That's what I was thinking. One day, Kenneth and I went out to the city. We spent a delightful time looking at furniture and matching dinnerware together. Just as we were thinking of taking a break, a voice said, "Isn't that Kenneth?" Kenneth turned around, and I followed his gaze. A flashy young woman stood there, dressed in a low-cut dress, high-heeled pumps, and emitting a strong perfume scent. "Rachel. What are you doing here?" The woman named Rachel scrutinized me, making me feel uncomfortable. Kenneth introduced her to me. "Holly, this is your first time meeting her, right? This is my sister, Rachel. So, this is her. Nice to meet you, I'm Holly." So she was my sister-in-law. She was different from what I had imagined, but I politely greeted her. Judging people by their appearance is wrong, isn't it? Just as I was reflecting on this, Rachel laughed mockingly. "Oh, so you're already married? Wow, you are handsome and has a high income, but you married such a plain woman. That's just weird." I was taken aback by her blatantly rude comment on our first meeting. True, Kenneth is 4 years younger than me, good-looking, and works for a major pharmaceutical company, earning above-average income. It's not surprising that strangers might think we're mismatched. But I couldn't understand how she could say such things to my face. Thinking that we might not get along, Kenneth stepped forward to defend me and scolded Rachel. "Hey, don't say such rude things. And you should properly greet her. Especially since you missed the engagement party due to your own convenience." Rachel laughed it off without any concern. "Well, I had a mixer to go to after a long time." Wait, wasn't she supposed to be busy with her studies? Shocked by the reason for her absence, I decided to try and mediate. I was worried that this could escalate into a heated argument between my husband and his sister. Well, we're meeting today, so that's good, right? Rachel, I look forward to getting along with you." Rachel glared at me. "What do you do anyway?" "I'm going to be a doctor, you know." Don't get too familiar with me. Her aura of "I'm important, I'm special" was overwhelming. I've encountered many people with high pride, but she was exceptional. I tried to calm down Kenneth, who was about to yell, and replied, "I'm currently a housewife." "I used to be." But Rachel interrupted me before I could finish. "A housewife? That's just like being unemployed. Unemployed people are just society's garbage. And now you're my sister-in-law? Seriously? Oh, are you just a parasite living off my brother's money?" I wanted her to apologize to all housewives. I felt my cheeks involuntarily twitch. In Rachel's mind, housewives seemed equivalent to unemployed people, which was an extreme view. Maybe my attempt to keep the peace had backfired. "Rachel, enough. Holly isn't the kind of person you think." "It's okay, Kenneth." I calmed my husband down. Even though it was brief, I felt I understood what kind of person Rachel was. She must be intelligent, having passed her exams on the first try and still keeping up with her credits. But her personality seemed to have significant issues. Being a doctor is a wonderful profession indeed. It's a tough journey, but good luck with it. I smiled warmly. What do you know? I don't need your fake advice. Oh, and by the way, I'm still a student, so I'll pass on giving a wedding gift, thanks. My husband seemed too tired to get angry anymore. "Just go," he said, gesturing as if shooing away an animal. Rachel complained in response. "I came to say hi, but what a bad attitude." "Well, whatever. I'm busy too," Rachel said by then, and left. After Rachel disappeared from sight, Kenneth deeply apologized to me. "I'm really sorry about my sister. I can't believe she said all those rude things. She used to be more reasonable." I shook my head and said, "It's okay. Honestly, my impression of Rachel was nearly the worst, but it's much better than having a fight because of me." We managed to exchange greetings, and from now on, I just need to keep my distance. Thank you for defending me so many times. You know what, let's change our mood and have some coffee. I'm craving some delicious coffee. When I smiled, Kenneth nodded, looking relieved. A few days later, I was visiting a large hospital nearby. Carrying a tote bag with flowers and a change of clothes, I reached for the door of a private room. "Mom, it's Holly. How are you feeling?" As I opened the door, my mother smiled happily from her bed. I regularly visit my hospitalized mother to help with her clothes and personal care. Today she seems to be in pretty good spirits. In place of my mother, my brother Andrew, removing his stethoscope, answered. He works as a doctor at this hospital and is also keeping an eye on our mother's condition. This familiar face always brings a smile to my face. "It's been a while, Andrew." He smiled and said, "Yeah," continuing to record our mother's progress. I set down my tote bag and sat on a round chair beside my mother's bed. Dad was here until a moment ago, but he left for a conference. Bad timing. It would have been nice if the whole family could have been together. What a pity. Mother chuckled. Actually, this hospital is run by my father. I used to work here as a doctor, just like my father and brother. It feels strange being here, a place that's both my family home and former workplace. After enjoying a chat, my mother, feeling sleepy from her medication, said, "Maybe the medicine seems to be working." I feel a bit drowsy, and started to drift off to sleep. After tucking her in, my brother said, seeing both of us might have comforted her. We smiled at each other and left the room. My brother and I sat down on a couch in the lobby. "How are things with Kenneth? Are you two getting along?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, we're having a good time every day." He laughed and patted my head. "Ever since I was young, he's always been overly concerned about me, and that hasn't changed even after my marriage. Everyone in our family was worried when you left the hospital. Meeting Kenneth was the best thing that happened to you. I think I've been able to recover because of Kenneth's presence." While we were chatting, a nurse called my brother away. "I'll be right back, just wait here for a bit." I nodded and watched him go to attend to a patient. He's usually busy, second only to our father, the director. It's almost miraculous that we had time to chat. I would have been helping out at the hospital, just like my dad and brother, if things had been different. Feeling slightly gloomy, I sighed. Hey, what's the unemployed Holly doing here? Hearing a familiar loud voice, I looked up. There was my sister-in-law, Rachel, looking down at me with a malicious smile while I sat on the couch. I was irked by her emphasis on unemployed, but I maintained a smile. Hi, Rachel. I came to visit my mom today. You know, we're in a hospital, so it's better to keep your voice down. Feeling uncomfortable at this encounter, I inwardly groaned. Rachel ignored my subtle hint and continued to speak loudly. Wow, your mom's hospitalized? I came here for a clinical training today, Rachel said. From her attire, I had somewhat guessed that might be the case. It's not unusual, considering she's a med student at a nearby university. But I wish I hadn't run into her. Even so, her appearance is a bit off. I discreetly glanced at Rachel's outfit and couldn't help but feel dismayed. Though not as extreme as the last time we met, her makeup was still flashy, and her loosely tied hair was casual. I wonder if she understands, though there's hardly any time to fix up her appearance. When I worked as a doctor, I wore makeup too, but I always prioritized cleanliness and kept it subtle to not discomfort the patients. Doesn't anyone advise her on this? Glancing around, I noticed several medical students and doctors from this hospital, who were my former colleagues, looking pale and uneasy behind her. Most of these doctors are my former colleagues, and the medical students, upon being whispered to, seem to realize that I am the daughter of the hospital director. To them, Rachel must appear as a reckless med student offending the director's daughter. Concerned that Rachel's loud voice would be disruptive in the hospital, I tried to suggest moving elsewhere. Rachel, please keep your voice down, it's disturbing. As if on purpose, Rachel exaggeratedly sighed and interrupted me. A woman like you, unemployed and catching a high-income man like my brother, must be a relief to your mother, right? I bet you're making him pay for your mother's hospital bills, aren't you? Just like a trashy family would. She smirked, making it seem like I was some sort of embarrassment in front of everyone. Her awful words shocked not only the nearby doctors and medical students, but also the passing patients, who frowned. Being publicly called unemployed and having my innocent mother insulted was too much for me. Hey, enough is enough. This person is. One of the doctors, unable to stand it any longer, stepped in to stop Rachel, but she wouldn't listen. She deserves to be spoken to like this, Rachel laughed. The doctor who intervened furrowed his brow at Rachel's remark and left, muttering, "Your life is over, kid." Rachel seemed clueless about what that meant. Then, my brother Andrew, who had finished his work, came back. Seeing me and Rachel face to face, and the strange atmosphere around us, he looked puzzled. "Ah, Andrew." Rachel's attitude changed drastically with Andrew's arrival, and I was taken aback. She was the epitome of putting on a facade. She changed her tone and started cozying up to my brother. I couldn't help but notice that even her facial expression seemed to alter. Andrew is young, talented, and handsome, even from a sister's biased view. Being the successor to our father, he's quite popular. I instantly realized that Rachel was aiming for him. "Holly, what's going on?" Andrew asked me by name, to which Rachel glared at me. Andrew, are you close with her?" Calling a doctor at her training site by his first name. As I was appalled, Andrew distanced himself from Rachel and casually replied, "Well, yes." Rachel, apparently unhappy with his response, persisted annoyingly, "But she's married, you know? You weren't aware of that, right? Andrew, you're popular, you should be careful." Her sugary, nasal voice was irritating. She seemed to mistake me for a rival aiming for Andrew. "I know. She's my sister, after all." At Andrew's words, Rachel's actions halted. "What? What?" I struggled to contain my laughter at Rachel's stunned expression. While my Rachel stood there dumbfounded, the medical student who had intervened earlier whispered in Andrew's ear. He was likely explaining the whole situation. Andrew's expression turned stern in an instant. "Wait, so Holly is the daughter of the director of this hospital?" As Rachel looked confused, I nodded. "Yes, I'm his daughter. I originally worked here as a doctor." I had to quit due to health issues. Now, I'm recovering and temporarily putting my efforts into being a housewife. Rachel turned pale at my words. I heard from Kenneth that she was hoping to get a job at this hospital. She must realize now that after insulting my mother and me, and with my brother hearing it, her chances of employment here are bleak. And so are her dreams of marrying into wealth. I glanced at Andrew's profile and smiled inwardly. She's unbelievable as a person. Andrew muttered quietly. It seems he never had any interest in Rachel in the first place. Rachel seems to be quite excellent as a medical student, I continued. At my words, Rachel visibly flinched. To easily label people as social garbage or belittle them, that's a problem not just as a doctor but as a human being. Unless you realize what that problem is, you're not qualified to be a doctor. Reflect on that. The people around nodded in agreement with my admonishing tone. Lectured by me, whom she had mocked, and disappointed by Andrew she admired. It must have been a series of embarrassments for her. However, I didn't want her to become a doctor as she was. Doctors not only bear responsibility for lives, but also need to empathize with people's hearts, I believe. Huh? I don't get it. Feeling uncomfortable with the atmosphere, Rachel turned and ran away in a hurry. Don't run in the hospital. Ah. Scolded by a passing nurse, surprised Rachel took a spectacular fall. Andrew and I looked at each other and laughed with a sense of resignation. Half a year passed. Rachel, already known for her bad character, had become completely isolated after ridiculing me in the hospital. Prideful, she then resorted to heavy drinking, leading to a severe injury and hospitalization. Ironically, she was now saved by the very doctors she aimed to become, finally understanding her own arrogance. I'm so ashamed. I want to apologize to Holly, she expressed regret and reflection, as I heard from my in-laws. She decided to take a break from medical school and planned to start afresh after her discharge, but it's going to be a thorny path for her. Meanwhile, I secured a new job as a medical doctor at a pharmaceutical company. My role involves researching and developing medications, as well as verifying the safety of new drugs. My father and brother asked if I would return to the hospital, but I wanted to try something new. My mother's health improved enough for home care, and she's looking forward to attending our wedding next year.